Good afternoon, everybody, or good day. It's almost noon here in Alberta, and I don't expect good af good afternoon, everybody, and good day. It depends on where you are. It's almost noon here in Alberta, and I don't expect too many people to be online, but hopefully you'll get a chance to watch this at some stage. We're kind of at the end of a heat wave here in a lot of Canada, but definitely in BC and Alberta, so it's nice to have a bit of cooler weather. This past week was definitely a challenge for a lot of people. And at the beginning of the week, I said to my groups and my clients, look, all we can do is try our best this week and just monitor our hydration and inflammation and any symptoms of dehydration we might experience because some things are out of our control. And a heat wave, as unexpected as the past heat wave was, and we're not totally out of it, it will have a huge impact on your body, which of course will have an influence on the scales. And the reason I'm doing this post now is because on Saturdays, many of my clients send their weights, and in my groups, we do our weigh-ins on Saturday. So then this morning, even though I had mentioned it at the start of the week, look, I think many people are going to either maintain or even slightly gain this week. People were still discouraged and upset, which I totally get. And I do always encourage my clients and my people and my followers, like, yeah, we'll use the scales as a tool, but it's not a definitive measurement of our progress. It's our subjective number or measurement, but we also look at the objectives. So we do look at our pictures, our measurements, how our clothes fit, all our other biomarkers. But it still can be discouraging when you see that the scales is slightly up or maybe you didn't lose, even though you think you put your best effort in. So there's always going to be instances that are totally out of our control, like a heat wave, like your menstrual cycle, like trauma or stress or something. And all of these things will directly impact the scales. And it doesn't mean that you're not making progress on your journey. And it doesn't mean that maybe you didn't actually lose body fat if that was your goal this week. It just means that there may be other influences at hand. So, for instance, with the heat wave, and it's still kind of impending, obviously there was a lot of dehydration going on. Um, and because of that, I was pumping out a lot of posts and information trying to keep people aware of all the different symptoms of dehydration, how much water to drink, their hydrating foods. I was trying my best, but what I noticed is people were still losing sight of everything, which I get it. The heat wave made everyone really irritable and frustrated, and it was hard to think. And one of the issues with dehydration and losing minerals is going to be an imbalance in our sodium potassium pump. And when the sodium potassium pump, which is basically a pump that helps us maintain our intracellular and extracellular fluid levels, when that sodium potassium pump gets thrown off, what we can experience is a type of hypernatremia, and that can happen in the brain, where your brain will start to swell because it's basically dehydrated and it's pulling in or pushing in as much fluid into the cells as it can to basically survive and function. But when that happens, we see a lot of cognitive issues and brain fog and just I can't think and I can't even go online, like that whole inability, and then the irritability follows. And then, of course, we get the headaches from dehydration, which not many people still don't recognize that, hey, if you have a headache, one of the first things you should look at is probably that dehydration aspect of things. So this week being a prime example of lots of headaches. I didn't hear too much about migraines, which is good, but definitely lots of headaches. So in that hyponatremia situation where we've got low concentrations of plasma sodium or blood sodium, we drive water into the cells. And this then makes the cells swell, of course, causing edema. And this doesn't exclude the brain. So when our sodium potassium pump is off, and let's say we've been sweating a lot, and one of the posts I did this week was about if you lick your lips or you lick your hands or your skin and you taste salt or it's salty, you're losing a lot of minerals. And when we lose a lot of minerals, that's not just our sodium. We're also losing our calcium and our potassium, some magnesium. We're losing everything. And that is going to impact that sodium and potassium pump. When the sodium potassium pump goes out of balance, the body is going to be stressed right down to a cellular level. When that happens, we go into a state of hyponatremia where the body tries to push water into the cells as a survival mechanism. And this is where we see swelling, and this is fluid retention. And many people don't think of, well, dehydration and fluid retention, how can that work? Like they're total opposite ends of the spectrum. Well, actually, it happens quite a lot all the time. So when you are dehydrated, as a survival mechanism, your body will try to hold onto as much fluid as it can, especially around your essential organs, to keep you alive. And that, of course, is holding on to water. That's your fluid retention. When you retain fluids, you will then see a lot of this swelling or the appearance of edema or bloating or even what we would consider aspects of inflammation. And when that happens, of course, and you step on the scales the next day or later that day, I mean, you'll even feel it in your hands. They'll be stiff. You'll see they're swollen. Your wedding ring might be tighter. But you will see that on the scales because that will have an impact on the scales because it has a mass. And we need to understand this because it can be easy for many people to get really disheartened when they stand on the scales and they see, well, after my effort this week, I'm maintaining or I'm up slightly or I should have lost. And some people will just completely throw in the towel then. And I can't curse right now, but normally I would. Um, so this is really easy, and this is something to remember because this happened to everyone. Um, and now, so everyone, of course, is individual. Some women, men even, will metabolize fluids better and not have issues with circulation or renal issues, or there will be no kind of, there are actually people that don't have issues with swelling or inflammation at all, as crazy as that sounds. So they might not experience a difference. Um, but for a lot of people this past week, we did experience a lot of dehydration. We did lose a lot of minerals. Now, I was telling the client on Friday, my system completely crashed. So I had worked out in the gym hard for like Monday through Thursday. And as much as I tried to replenish with my electrolytes, I had essential amino acids, I drink mountains of mineral water. I was losing it faster than I was replenishing it. And then by Friday, my function was gone. I was saying to one client, like, I was actually worried about organ failure because I could barely stand. I had to go to bed and just rest. Like, not only am I Irish, so these kind of 35, 40 degrees extremes maybe impact me a little bit more. And not to get too personal, but I also was menstruating, so I was losing even more fluid then. And many women know that at the start of menstruation, you can also have diarrhea, so then you lose even more fluids. Combine that with the exercise, combine that with the heat wave. Of course, I wasn't sleeping great with the heat wave, and just it all came crashing down. Friday, I just felt like I was crashing. I had to go to bed. I just could not recover. Yesterday, it was a tough day. It was like a lazy day trying to replenish all my fluids. I fasted longer so that I could draw attention to my organs. But regardless, when there is a heat wave, there will be a lot of fluid retention. And the one we saw this week was extreme. It wasn't like our normal summer. It wasn't just something that's a little bit hot. It was extreme. It was, we had air quality warnings. We, of course, had our forest fires. We had people living out their basements, people struggling with breathing. It was tough. And because of that, your body felt the effects. It was an external stressor. That's what this week was. And any sort of external stressors will cause a survival mechanism to happen in the body. And when that happens, we do see our swelling, we see our fluid retention, We see a lot of aches and pains. We see a lot of inflammation. And depending on the individual, this will have an impact on the scales because it all has molecular mass. So if you're holding on to fluid, or if your body sees that you're stressed, or it's trying to keep you alive or heal you in some way, it will pull fluid to certain areas of the body. You will feel it. You will feel it. Like I said, your wedding rings, your hands will be stiff, aches and pains in your joints, headaches, stuff like that. That all will impact the scales. So even if you stood on the scales this morning after having an awesome week, like you were totally on track, yet you were maintaining or up, some people will be up a couple of pounds. Some people might be up half a pound. It depends on the individual. For many reasons, not just age and height, but kidney function, cellular function, lots of stuff. But regardless, it doesn't mean that you're not making progress, and it doesn't mean that you didn't lose body fat. It doesn't mean like you gained 2 pounds of fat. What it means is your body is in survival mode right now. You've had a stressful week. It's trying its best to balance out those sodium potassium pump, so that balance of the extracellular water. And one other thing to remember is not many people, well, I think people know this, but they forget about it, is that especially more towards the age group of women that I tend to work with, is that perimenopausal, menopausal age. So perimenopausal, which can start from age 35 and up in most women, they are more susceptible to acute hyponatremia, like so that short bout of dehydration and swelling because of female hormones and the changes in the female hormones, which increase vasopressin. And vasopressin is a pituitary hormone which acts to promote the retention of water by the kidneys and increase blood pressure. And of course, this is going to directly impact that sodium potassium pump as well. So along with what I was saying and how much fluid you'll retain and what your inflammation will be like, that will be directed towards where your hormonal profile is right now and your age, where you kind of are on that spectrum. So there's a lot to consider. But the main point I wanted to get across with this video is that just because the scales stayed the same or it went up slightly does not mean that you didn't make progress. You have to take a minute and pause and reflect. What's my symptom picture like? How do I feel? What was this past week like? Do I feel dehydrated? Like, I feel thirsty now, even though I've been hydrating non-stop, literally. And also, if you've got excessive urination going on too, not only the sweating, but using the bathroom a lot more, you're going to be losing a lot of fluids there. So you have to replenish that as well. So there's a lot to really consider. And then you can say, okay, well, considering this week, I'm going to take the scales as it is. I understand that this past week in the heat wave impacted the scales directly. I'm not going to let it get to me, and I'm just going to reset and hope for cooler weather for the next week and then move forward. I know it can be tough to not get disheartened by the scales, but like I say, the scales is not definitive. It is a tool that we use in combination of everything else, and it can be great for some people, especially for our older women. The scales as a tool can be really good, but otherwise we want to look at everything. And this video, like I said, is just to kind of encourage you that it just because the scales was up based on this past week in the heat wave does not mean that you actually gained body fat. It just means that you're most likely retaining fluids, that you're experiencing sort of swelling and inflammation, and we need to accept that as it is and just kind of move our mindset away from that, because the last thing you want to do is to let something like this that's totally out of your control knock you off track and put you into a spiral downward position. I definitely don't want that, and I know you don't. So that's all I have to say on this. If you have any questions, let me know. As always, I hope you have a great day. If you comment below, I will see them and respond. Please share with anyone you feel may benefit from this. Have a great weekend, and I'll chat to you guys real soon, and stay hydrated. Bye-bye.